Have you ever found yourself doing something, maybe scrolling through social media or reaching for that extra snack and just wonder, why am I doing this again? It feels completely automatic, right? Almost like you're on autopilot, even when deep down you wish you weren't. Or maybe you've seen how a seemingly small change like, say, starting to exercise can create this huge ripple effect, completely transforming not just someone's health, but their whole life, maybe even a company's culture, or even sparking a movement. Our daily lives are, this rich tapestry woven from countless choices. But what if, beneath the surface, a lot of those choices aren't really choices at all? What if they're actually deeply ingrained patterns, kind of governing our every move? Welcome to Success Happiness. Today, we're embarking on a really fascinating and I think potentially life-altering journey. We're diving into a captivating book talk that promises to reveal the hidden architecture of our behavior. Charles Duhigg's groundbreaking work, The Power of Habit, Why We Do What We Do in Life and Business.
Now, Charles Duhigg, he's a Pulitzer Prize finalist, an acclaimed investigative journalist, and he didn't just, write a book. He masterfully synthesized cutting-edge neuroscience, psychology, and these incredible real-world case studies. He uncovered the precise science behind how habits truly work. And maybe more importantly, he gives us the blueprint for how we can intentionally change them to achieve our goals and, cultivate a life brimming with the success, happiness we all aspire to.
Exactly. And this isn't just about understanding some dry academic concept, not at all. It's really about gaining a powerful, practical toolkit, something you can use to reshape your destiny, basically, to become the architect of your own behavioral patterns. We'll explore not just what habits are at their core, but why they possess such immense power in our lives, and crucially, how you can harness that incredible power. We'll connect the dots, you see, from individual transformation, like someone overcoming addiction or achieving peak athletic performance, all the way to organizational success. We'll see how entire companies can be revolutionized just by understanding and applying these principles. It's a journey into the very wiring of our existence, really, offering profound implications for anyone seeking greater fulfillment and impact.
Okay, let's unpack this foundational concept then, because this is where Duhigg really pulls back the curtain on how our brains operate. It's fascinating. At the core of every single habit, he introduces us to this simple yet incredibly powerful three-step neurological loop: the cue, the routine, and the reward. Just imagine your entire day, from the blare of your alarm clock to automatically brushing your teeth, pouring that first coffee without thinking, or even that unconscious reflex to check your phone for the, 20th time. So many of these actions feel like considered decisions, right? Like you're actively choosing each step. But the book shows they're often just deeply ingrained habits, triggered by a specific cue, followed by an automatic, almost thoughtless routine, and then reinforced by some kind of gratifying reward. This loop is constantly playing out, silently shaping so much of what we do.
And what's truly fascinating here and really essential to grasp is that this loop operates primarily on a neurological level, often completely beneath our conscious awareness. Think of it as your brain's brilliant energy-saving shortcut. Our brains are incredibly efficient. They're constantly looking for ways to minimize the mental effort spent on decision-making. So once a pattern, a sequence of actions, is established and it consistently leads into a positive outcome, the brain basically automates it. It stops fully participating in decision-making for that particular sequence. Now, this mechanism is incredibly efficient when it lets us do complex things like driving a car or typing or tying our shoes without consciously thinking about every single muscle movement. But, and this is the key, this same efficiency can become problematic. It can lock us into behaviors that don't serve us, behaviors we consciously want to change, but find ourselves repeating almost against our will. The key insight here isn't just that habits exist, but that they're predictable. And if they're predictable, well, they're hackable.
To really understand the power of this unconscious loop, Duhigg opens the book with an incredible, almost unbelievable story. It really drives this point home. It's the profound case of Eugene Pauly. Back in 1993, due to severe brain damage from viral encephalitis, Eugene lost the ability to form any new memories. But we're not talking about just being a bit forgetful. He couldn't remember what he had for breakfast an hour ago, or the names of his doctors, even moments after meeting them. Imagine that, living in a perpetual present. Yet, astonishingly, despite this devastating memory loss, Eugene could still learn and execute complex routines. It was unconscious learning in action, a real testament to the power of habit. For instance, if you asked him to draw a map of his neighborhood or point out the kitchen in his own home, he simply couldn't. No conscious recall. But if he was hungry, his caregiver saw this amazing thing happen. He'd stand up, walk directly into the kitchen, open a specific cabinet, and find a jar of nuts. Even though he didn't remember where the kitchen was or even what nuts were, he'd just go to the last place he found them. Similarly, he could walk around the block, his usual route, and return home safely. Sometimes he'd even bring back pine cones or a stray puppy, and he wouldn't remember the walk itself or the puppy he just found. It wasn't conscious recall. It was pure habit, operating completely outside his awareness.
Which raises an absolutely critical question, doesn't it? How could Eugene learn new behaviors and do all these things when his conscious memory for new information was, well, virtually non-existent? The answer lies in the basal ganglia. Think of the basal ganglia as your brain's highly efficient but utterly unconscious autopilot system. It's this ancient golf ball-sized lump of tissue deep inside our brains. So fundamental, you find similar structures even in fish or reptiles. This structure remained largely intact in Eugene, and scientists discovered it's the brain's undisputed habit headquarters. It literally stores habits even while the rest of the brain went to sleep, allowing us to perform countless actions automatically. This frees up our conscious brain, the CEO part, for more complex stuff like decision-making, problem-solving, creative thought. It's like having a dedicated personal assistant for all your repetitive tasks.
It's truly mind-bending when you think about it. If someone with no conscious memory can form and rely on such powerful habits, imagine the immense untapped capacity you have. Imagine the potential to intentionally shape your routines for greater well-being, for greater achievement. It's a really empowering idea, suggesting our potential isn't just about conscious effort, it's hardwired into us. It underscores that even when our conscious mind is tired or falters, these deeper habit mechanisms can still drive us forward if, we've programmed them correctly.
And the scientific validation for this concept, happening around the same time Eugene fell ill, is equally compelling. It gives us a clearer picture of the neurology. MIT researchers were doing these ingenious experiments with rats in a tea maze. They'd put a rat in the maze, and a click sound that was the cue would signal the opening of a partition. At the end of the maze, there was chocolate waiting, the reward. Initially, when a rat heard that click, its brain, especially the basal ganglia, worked furiously. It explored everything, sniffing corners, scratching walls, processing every scent and sound, almost like it was consciously analyzing, deciding where to go. But as the rats repeated the maze, something remarkable happened. The overall brain activity dropped dramatically. The rats ran faster, more directly, less hesitation. Their brains now only spiked with activity right at the cue, the click, and right at the reward, the chocolate. The routine itself, running straight, turning left, eating chocolate, became what the scientists called chunked behavior. This chunking is basically your brain packaging a sequence of actions into a single automatic unit, like a computer macro. It's incredibly efficient because your brain doesn't have to deliberate over each step anymore. This is exactly how our brains create shortcuts for complex things like learning an instrument or driving a car. It allows us to handle intricate actions with minimal conscious effort. The basal ganglia takes over, creates this automatic response, freeing up our higher cognitive functions. It's fundamental to how we learn and automate our lives.
Okay, so we've got the habit loop, cue, routine, reward, solid foundation. But here's where it gets really interesting, because the book reveals this crucial, often overlooked element. It doesn't just enable the habit, it truly powers it, locks it into place with incredible force. And that element is the craving. It's not just the reward itself that matters in the long run. It's the anticipation of that reward, that deep-seated neurological urge. That's what really drives our actions and embeds a habit firmly in our brains. It's like the engine that keeps the loop spinning, often whether we consciously want it to or not.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it profoundly explains why we persist in certain behaviors, even when the logical payoff seems small or maybe even harmful in the long run. That craving, that potent anticipation, is just an incredibly powerful force in our neurology, often way more powerful than logic or rational thought. It creates this future state of satisfaction, this dopamine-fueled yearning that our brain actively seeks out. That yearning is what keeps the habit loop spinning, making us repeat behaviors almost compulsively. It highlights that the emotional, the anticipatory aspects are just as critical, maybe even more critical, than the actual reward for locking in a habit.
Let's look at a brilliant historical example of this in action. Claude Hopkins, an advertising genius, early 20th century. He was tasked with selling Pepsodent toothpaste back when, honestly, hardly anyone brushed their teeth regularly. It just wasn't a thing. And he couldn't just focus on cavity protection because, well, frankly, most toothpaste back then, including Pepsodent, were chemically kind of worthless for that. He needed a different angle, something to create a new habit. Hopkins' brilliance was in identifying this universal yet totally overlooked cue, tooth film. He crafted these ads that encouraged people to just run your tongue across your teeth. He knew they'd feel that naturally occurring, slightly fuzzy membrane. The film was always there, right? An ever-present cue. The advertised reward was beautiful, satin-smooth teeth. a prettier smile. But here's the secret sauce, the real driver. It was the specific ingredients Hopkins added to Pepsodent. They created this cool tingling sensation in the mouth. People started to crave that tingling feeling. They began equating it with cleanliness, even though the tingle itself didn't actually clean anything. They felt their mouths weren't truly clean unless they felt that tingle. He wasn't just selling a product. He was selling a sensation that satisfied a newly created craving.
Yes, this is such a classic, almost textbook example of creating a craving. By associating a new, distinct sensation with a desired outcome, cleanliness, other toothpaste brands, they eventually caught on and copied it, adding similar oils and chemicals to get that familiar tingle. Hopkins wasn't just selling toothpaste. He was selling a sensation that became deeply intertwined with the habit of brushing, an expectation that had to be met. It highlights how incredibly powerful it is to understand what people truly crave, even if it's a sensation rather than the advertised benefit, and then deliver on it. Once that tingling became the expected reward, brushing transformed from this obscure practice into an automatic daily ritual for millions, fundamentally changing global hygiene habits.
A similar, equally insightful lesson came much later with Febreze, the air freshener, now a billion-dollar household name. Initially, Procter Gamble tried marketing Febreze purely as a solution for eliminating bad odors, like in homes with pets or smokers. Their ads showed people getting rid of cat smells or stale smoke, but it failed miserably. Why? Because people living with constant smells often become desensitized. They don't even notice them anymore. If you don't realize your house stinks, why buy a product to fix it? The cue, the bad smell just wasn't registering. The product only took off, became this phenomenal success, when P&G changed their strategy completely. They shifted focus from problem-solving to a reward ritual. They added more perfume to the formula, and crucially, they started showing women spraying Febreze on freshly cleaned beds, or laundry just out of the dryer, or a sofa right after vacuuming. The craving shifted dramatically. It wasn't about eliminating bad smells anymore. It became about wanting a nice smell after cleaning. That refreshing, pleasant scent became the final flourish, signaling completion, a truly pleasant environment. The act of spraying Febreze became the reward itself, a symbol of a job well done. That created a strong, positive craving loop.
Exactly. And this Febreze turnaround offers a really important insight for you, the listener. When you're trying to build or change a habit, ask yourself, are you mostly trying to eliminate something negative? Or are you creating a positive, desired outcome that actively fosters a craving? Often, the latter is far more motivating, far more conducive to strong, lasting habits. Febreze's success was all about understanding that people crave positive sensations and rituals, not just the absence of a negative. The ritual of spraying became the reward, driving continuous use, creating a really sticky habit. And Dr. Wolfram Schultz's experiments with Julio the monkey illustrate this neurological basis of craving with stunning clarity. When Julio was cued a light flash to pull a lever for blackberry juice, Schultz's probes measured his brain activity. They didn't just register pleasure when the juice arrived. Over time, as the habit formed, Julio's brain started anticipating the reward. There was a significant spike in pleasure response, specifically dopamine, the instant he saw the cue, even before the juice appeared. He was craving it before it even showed up, a clear neurological signature of anticipation. Then, when the juice was deliberately withheld after the cue, a distinct neurological pattern linked to desire and frustration erupted. The craving was powerfully present, but unsatisfied.
And that craving, if left unsatisfied, can manifest as anger, anxiety, even a kind of depression, as they saw even in these monkeys. It really shows how deeply ingrained these anticipatory urges are in our biology, way beyond conscious thought. Think about us humans, checking our phones constantly, even when we consciously know it's probably just some trivial fantasy football update or another unimportant email. It's not really about the notification itself, is it? It's the anticipation of what it might bring, a connection, a distraction, something new, a little hit of novelty. That craving for something new, that potential dopamine rush, is incredibly powerful. It shapes even our most modern habits. It's that constant underlying hum driving so much of our behavior. So, okay, we've got the habit loop. We understand the power of craving. Now, what does this all mean for us when we want to change habits, especially the ones we don't like? The book introduces what Duhigg calls the golden rule of habit change, and it's fundamental, almost liberating, really. You can't truly extinguish a bad habit. You can only change it. The key isn't to fight the existing pathway, but to redirect it. You keep the same cue, you provide the same reward, but you deliberately insert a new routine into that loop. You're not deleting the program. You're just rewriting a specific line of code.
Exactly. And this is a crucial insight precisely because it acknowledges how, well, neurologically efficient and stubborn habits are. It means you're not fighting your brain's natural mechanisms, you're leveraging them smartly. The basal ganglia is going to trigger a routine when it sees that familiar cue and expects that reward. It's what it does. The genius of the golden rule is that it gives your brain a new, more beneficial path to get that desired reward when triggered by the cue. Rather than trying to just delete the whole circuit, which is often, frankly, impossible, you replace the old routine with a new, more constructive one. This also gives you a sense of agency, doesn't it? Knowing you don't have to struggle endlessly to stop something, but just focus on replacing it, that can be incredibly motivating.
Let's look at a powerful large-scale application. Tony Dungy and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, remember them? They were famously called America's Orange Doormat because they were just bad for a long time, easy to beat. They had this deeply ingrained habit of losing, of making mistakes under pressure, collapsing in key moments. It wasn't just individuals, it was systemic, a culture, a habit of failure. Dungy's strategy was brilliant in its simplicity and his deep understanding of habit. He didn't overhaul everything or introduce tons of complex new plays, no. Instead, he implemented a few simple, repeatable plays and drilled his players relentlessly on those fundamentals, over and over. The cue, like the opposing team's formation, the down and distance, the clock winding down, the reward victory, satisfaction, the crowd roaring, those stayed the same. But the routine, the specific actions players took in response to the cue, was simplified, clarified, and ingrained through endless repetition until it was totally automatic. At first, yeah, players struggled. They thought too much, second-guessed themselves, tried to overcomplicate things. Old habits die hard. But slowly, through Dungy's patient, consistent training, the patterns became so familiar, so deeply ingrained, they just unfolded automatically. We hear about players like Reagan Upshaw and John Lynch making these huge game-changing plays, interceptions, forced fumbles, shutting down opponents, not because they consciously strategized in that split second, but because their defensive actions became automatic. The habit loop took over. This freed up their minds from overthinking, allowing for incredible speed, precision, intuition. That shift from conscious thought to automatic execution. It transformed them from losers into champions, eventually leading the Bucs to a Super Bowl win, though Dungy had moved on by then, winning one with the Colts using similar principles. It showed changing a culture of losing was about changing collective habits.
Right. And the book explores how organizations, even ones that started with, quote, almost no grounding in science, like Alcoholics Anonymous, effectively operate as a giant machine for changing habit loops. For people like Bill Wilson, the founder, and countless others, AA provided new routines, attending meetings, connecting with a sponsor, community support, structured reflection. These address the powerful cues, stress, anxiety, loneliness, emotional triggers that once led to the craving for relief alcohol provided. AA didn't try to eliminate the craving for relief itself, which is often impossible, right? But it redirected the response to that craving. It offered a new, healthy routine to achieve a similar emotional reward. Calm, connection, maybe control.
Another really compelling example, more personal, is Mandy. She suffered from severe, compulsive nail biting since she was a kid, caused her real physical and emotional distress. Her therapist helped her meticulously identify the cue, usually a growing tension in her fingertips, often when studying, watching TV, or just feeling stressed, and the reward, a brief physical stimulation that felt like a kind of completeness or release. Instead of just trying to stop, which we know rarely works, Mandy learned a competing response through habit reversal therapy. Whenever she felt that tension, the cue, she'd immediately put her hands in her pockets or grip a pencil firmly. Then, to satisfy the underlying craving for physical stimulation, she'd rub her arm or maybe wrap her knuckles on a desk. The craving for stimulation was still there, but the routine changed completely, and it led to dramatic success, breaking her lifelong habit. It's a perfect example of deliberate substitution.
However, and this is a really important point the book makes for a habit change to truly stick, especially when you're facing high stress or big life challenges, something more is often needed. And that something is belief. Belief that change is possible. And that belief, particularly in programs like AA, often emerges and gets solidified with the help of a group, a community. Committing to change as part of a collective where others share your struggles, offer empathy, provide support, it dramatically increases the odds of success. When people truly believe change is possible and they have a strong, consistent support system reinforcing that belief, the new habits become much more durable, more resilient against life's inevitable stresses. That belief provides the resilience needed to maintain the new routine, even when the old craving feels overwhelming. It's crucial.
This next idea is truly inspiring. It offers this powerful shortcut to widespread improvement. Some habits aren't just about one action. They're what Duhigg calls keystone habits. These are powerful patterns that when you change them, they initiate this cascade of other positive transformations across your whole life or your family or even an organization. They're like those small foundational dominoes, right? When you tip them, they knock over a whole line of much bigger ones, creating this huge, far-reaching ripple effect. It's about strategic leverage.
Exactly. Keystone habits are fascinating because they suggest success doesn't depend on getting every single thing right or tackling 100 problems at once. No. Instead, it relies on identifying just a few key priorities that, when shifted, create this ripple effect across multiple areas. They influence how people work, eat, play, love, spend money, communicate, everything. By targeting just one keystone habit, you can achieve widespread, profound change with focused effort, impacting many other seemingly unrelated areas. What it really boils down to is leverage. Find the one small domino that creates the cascade. It's almost like strategic laziness, finding the most efficient path to widespread change.
Let's revisit Lisa Allen, the woman from the prologue. The scientists loved studying her because her life was such a clear example of habit change. Her decision in Cairo to quit smoking became her keystone habit. And it wasn't just casual. It came from this moment of profound sadness after her divorce, combined with this vivid image she had. She imagined herself on a desert expedition needing to survive. This one act of self-discipline, quitting smoking, was the catalyst for an amazing chain reaction. Over the next 6 months, the momentum from quitting smoking led to another positive change. She started jogging. Jogging, in turn, changed how she ate healthier choices. This improved her sleep, gave her more energy and focus at work. Better focus meant she started saving money more effectively, scheduled her days better, planned more for the future. She went back to school, bought a house, got engaged. It wasn't a series of unrelated decisions, it was a spreading change. One good habit enabling another, this powerful positive feedback loop. One significant change, the keystone habit of self-control around smoking, radiated out, improving everything because it laid the groundwork for discipline and self-awareness elsewhere.
Paul O'Neill's time as CEO of Alcoa gives us a powerful organizational example. When he took over the struggling aluminum giant back in '87, he shocked everyone, investors, analysts, everyone. At his very first meeting, he declared his sole focus, his only priority, would be worker safety. He even said he didn't care about profits. To Wall Street, this sounded completely irrelevant to the bottom line, almost absurd for a heavy manufacturing company dealing with inefficiency and labor issues. Many thought he was, frankly, crazy, but O'Neill understood that safety was a profound keystone habit. To genuinely reduce injuries, you couldn't just tell people, be safer. No. You had to meticulously analyze the entire manufacturing process, identify where things went wrong, why accidents happened. This meant educating workers on quality control, streamlining processes, making them safer and more efficient, and demanding honest, transparent communication about problems from everyone, top to bottom. As Alcoa's safety patterns shifted, other aspects of the company changed with startling speed. Unions, for instance, historically adversarial, surprisingly embraced productivity measurements because they help spot safety risks. This one keystone habit, prioritizing safety, led directly to reduced costs, dramatically higher quality, skyrocketing productivity. It proved, without a doubt, that focusing on safety made Alcoa the best, most streamlined aluminum company on Earth, achieving huge financial success because of its safety culture, not despite it.
And in elite sports, where victory can be decided by hundredths of a second, even tiny advantages make a massive difference. Michael Phelps, the most decorated Olympian ever, he didn't get there just through raw talent, though obviously he had plenty of that. His coach, Bob Bowman, understood this implicitly. He didn't just train Phelps's body, he meticulously built Phelps's mental habits. He saw them as the true keystone to his unparalleled success. Bowman developed what he called the videotape routine. At the end of every single practice, Bowman would tell Phelps, put in the videotape. Phelps would then go home, lie in bed, eyes shut, and mentally rehearse his perfect race, down to the tiniest detail. Every stroke, every breath, every turn, even picturing potential problems, like his goggles leaking and how he'd handle it. This routine built such deep confidence and automaticity that even when his goggles did leak in an Olympic final, the 200-meter butterfly in Beijing, he stayed completely calm. He just counted his strokes, executed his pre-programmed mental plan perfectly, and won the race. Another gold medal. It was a mental keystone habit that made all the difference. Showing performance isn't just physical training, but the deep psychological habits we build.
And keystone habits can be deceptively simple. Sometimes they seem small, almost insignificant, but have these huge, far-reaching effects. Duhigg cites studies showing that merely keeping a food journal, just the simple act of writing down everything you eat, can lead to significant weight loss. Even without participants being explicitly told to diet or change anything else, researchers found people just started noticing patterns like, oh, I always snack around 10 a.m. or I have a second dessert after dinner, and they proactively planned healthier alternatives. This simple act of awareness, this keystone habit of self-monitoring, created a structure. It gave them insight into their own behavior. It helped other healthy habits flourish without anyone telling them to change anything else. It empowered them by first making the invisible visible.
This next part is really exciting because it means self-control, often seen as this elusive trait only a lucky few have, isn't just fixed. It's a muscle you can actively develop. You can strengthen it. The book dives into compelling research showing willpower is arguably the single most important habit for individual success, influencing everything from academics and careers to finances and health. And, maybe most importantly, it can become automatic, deeply ingrained with consistent practice.
Yeah, Roy Baumeister and Mark Moravin's studies on this were brilliant. So simple, so effective. They put undergrads in a room with irresistible freshly baked chocolate chip cookies and separately a bowl of plain radishes. Okay. Then they divided the students. One group could eat the cookies. The other group, strictly instructed, eat only the radishes, ignore the cookies. So this latter group had to exert significant willpower, right, resisting those cookies. Afterwards, both groups were given the subsequent unsolvable puzzle task. The findings were stark. The students who had to eat radishes and ignore the cookies, the ones who used up their willpower, gave up significantly faster on the puzzle. It demonstrated very tangibly that willpower is indeed a finite resource. It can be depleted, just like a muscle gets tired after exercise. This depletion isn't just feeling tired, it's a measurable drop in mental energy affecting decisions, emotional regulation, everything. We basically have a limited willpower budget each day.
But here's the incredibly good news, and where the hope really lies. Other experiments showed that when people consistently strengthen their willpower in just one area of their lives, like sticking to a regular exercise routine, or a disciplined money management program, or consistent study habits, that self-discipline spilled over into other seemingly unrelated areas. It was this fascinating ripple effect. They ate less junk food, smoked fewer cigarettes, drank less alcohol, were more productive at work and school. It's like exercising one core muscle strengthens your entire physical core, right? Which then benefits everything else you do physically. By deliberately cultivating willpower in one domain, you essentially build a stronger, more resilient system of self-control across your whole life.
Exactly. And this profound insight is now being applied practically in really transformative ways, especially in education, like at Camp PP schools, that network of successful charter schools. Camp PP schools explicitly teach students willpower strengthening lessons. They treat self-control not as some innate talent, but as a trainable skill. It's about getting into that willpower groove, becoming practice at focusing on a goal, resisting impulses, delaying gratification. We need to actively train our brains to regulate impulses and stay focused. Understanding self-control isn't fixed. It's dynamic, trainable, like learning an instrument or a sport. It empowers students with a fundamental tool for life.
Let's revisit Travis Leach quickly. The young man who struggled with emotional outbursts, keeping jobs, maintaining stability. His experiences at Starbucks provided him with a new path, showing how organizations can systematically build willpower in their employees. Starbucks recognized their baristas faced these emotionally taxing inflection points all day long. Critical moments, often stressful, where a reaction could change everything, positive or negative. A prime example, an angry, demanding customer. These moments could easily derail a barista's willpower, lead to bad interactions, cost business, hurt morale. They needed a system. So to tackle these predictable challenges, Starbucks developed specific willpower habit loops. The most famous example is their latte method. Remember that. Listen, apologize, take action, thank, ensure satisfaction. For handling customer complaints, they rigorously trained employees like Travis to respond with this prescripted, disciplined routine, making self-control automatic at those critical high-stress moments. Instead of reacting emotionally, baristas had a pre-programmed, disciplined response ready to go. This systematic training transformed Travis's ability to manage his emotions, engage positively, perform consistently, led to greater personal and professional stability for him. It wasn't about suppressing emotion, but replacing an impulsive reaction with a constructive habit.
And beyond specific routines for specific moments, Starbucks found something equally profound. Giving employees a greater sense of agency, a genuine feeling of control over their work, like maybe designing uniforms or having input on schedules, radically increased their willpower and productivity. When people feel they have real decision-making authority, feel respected, autonomous, they bring more energy, focus, and self-discipline to their jobs. Which raises an incredibly important question for you, the listener. How much control do you truly feel you have in your own life? That sense of autonomy, that feeling of agency, it's a powerful, intrinsic fuel for self-discipline. And it's something you can actively cultivate and seek out, even in small ways.
Wow. This whole exploration into the mechanics of habit, it leads us to one of the Book's most profound, maybe most challenging questions. It touches on our very understanding of ourselves, our morals, our society. If our lives are so profoundly governed by these unconscious habit loops, how much free will do we actually have? Are we truly responsible for our ingrained behaviors, especially the ones that lead to negative or even destructive outcomes? It's a huge question. Deep philosophical, ethical implications.
Exactly. And this question is right at the heart of not just philosophy, but legal and personal accountability too.
Yeah.
If our brains are designed to automate, at what point do we lose conscious control? At what point does a habit become so ingrained it just bypasses our ability to choose? This is where Duhigg shifts from just understanding habits to really grappling with their ethical and personal implications. And he poses a distinction that's crucial for our own self-understanding.
He illustrates the extreme end of this spectrum with the truly chilling and tragic story of Brian Thomas. Back in 2009, while experiencing a rare, violent sleep terror, Brian unconsciously strangled his wife, Christine. He mistook her for an intruder in his sleep state. He awoke completely devastated, with absolutely no memory of the horrific act. The court ultimately ruled he acted without conscious choice. Due to his brain's primitive, deeply ingrained reactions during this profound sleepwalking state, a neurological anomaly. It was a tragic accident, this awful convergence of habit and severe brain malfunction, where conscious intention was entirely absent.
Yes, that tragic case highlights the extreme end. How our brains can operate on complete autopilot, following basic, almost primal patterns when conscious decision-making is just offline, incapacitated. Thomas literally did not know these automatic violent patterns existed, nor could he have consciously resisted them in that state. His free will, in that moment, was by all accounts entirely absent. The legal system recognized this. Acknowledging intent and conscious awareness were prerequisites for responsibility here. It forces us to confront the reality that there are states where our actions are purely driven by unconscious, automatic circuits without any guiding will.
Now, in stark, almost uncomfortable contrast, we learn about Angie Bachman, a woman who compulsively gambled away $1 million inheritance, destroyed her family's financial future. Casinos, particularly Harrah's, skillfully exploited her vulnerabilities, offering lavish freebies, private jets, concerts, huge lines of credit, all while her brain reacted to near misses on the slot machines not as losses, but as these tantalizing almost wins, which just fueled her addiction more. And she was acutely aware of her escalating gambling habit. She knew its destructive impact. She knew she had a problem. She expressed a desire to stop, yet felt utterly powerless against the drive to keep playing.
And here's where the legal verdict and Duhigg's crucial distinction makes a critical point. Bachman was held accountable for her actions. Thomas was not. This distinction, the book argues, lies fundamentally in awareness. Bachman knew her habit existed. She was aware of its destructive consequences. And crucially, she knew on some level that she could fight it, even if the impulse felt overwhelming. Scientific studies show pathological gamblers' brains react differently during near misses than non-problem gamblers. They get this profound mental high, a dopamine surge almost identical to a real win, which powerfully reinforces the urge to keep going. Her brain was effectively creating its own reward system for continuing the behavior, yes, but she was aware of it. This raises that important, deeply personal question for you. Where does the line between unconscious compulsion and personal responsibility truly lie? The book argues that once you understand how a habit functions, once you are aware of its cue, its routine, the reward it provides you, then acquire the profound responsibility to change it. Habits aren't immutable destiny. They can be ignored, they can be changed, or they can be replaced. The power of knowledge brings the burden and also the liberation of choice. It means while our brains are wired for automation, we, as conscious beings, have the capacity to observe, analyze, and deliberately re-engineer those wires.
The book beautifully concludes with the inspiring story of the renowned American philosopher William James. In his early 30s, he was feeling directionless, plagued by existential doubt, questioning his own agency, wrestling with these profound questions of free will. Overwhelmed, he decided to conduct this deeply personal year-long experiment. He would spend 12 months believing that he had control over his life and the free will to change. He famously wrote in his diary, "My first act of free will shall be to believe in free will." He practiced this belief daily, actively choosing to embrace the idea that he had genuine agency. There was no initial proof this belief was true, right? It was a pure act of faith, a mental habit he chose to cultivate. But this first act of free will, the profound decision to simply believe in free will, completely transformed his life. He married, became a celebrated Harvard professor. His work became incredibly influential, shaping psychology and philosophy. He famously wrote that the will to believe is the most important ingredient in creating belief and change. underscoring that our mental habits of belief are just as powerful, maybe more so, than any physical routine. It wasn't wishful thinking. It was deliberate, consistent cultivation of a belief system that then enabled other, more tangible changes.
Exactly. James, through his own experience and keen observation, realized that habits are fundamentally what allow us to do difficult things more easily with practice. Eventually, as he put it, with hardly any consciousness at all. Once we make a conscious choice about who we want to be, and then diligently establish the habits, both mental and physical, that align with that choice, we begin to move, quote, irresistibly toward our destiny. It's a profound statement on the power of intentional habit creation and the absolutely crucial role of belief in shaping our reality. It's not just about what you do, but what you habitually believe about what you can do, what's possible, and who you are destined to become. Our habits of thought about ourselves and our surroundings truly create the world we inhabit.
Wow. What an incredible journey we've taken through Charles Duhigg's The Power of Habit. Just amazing stuff. We've uncovered that simple yet profound habit loop cue, routine, reward that governs so much of our behavior. We've seen how cravings drive our deepest urges, cementing our routines. Learned the incredibly powerful golden rule of habit change replace, don't eradicate. Understood the wide-reaching ripple effect of keystone habits. Learned that willpower is a muscle we can strengthen and make automatic. And grasp the profound responsibility and maybe liberation that comes with knowing we can choose our habits and therefore choose our destiny.
That's right. And change might not be fast, and it certainly isn't always easy, let's be realistic. It requires conscious effort, deliberate practice. But with time, consistent effort, and a well-thought-out plan, almost any habit can be reshaped. That's the empowering message. Your success happiness journey, it begins with identifying just one routine you want to change, experimenting with different rewards to really understand what you truly crave, isolating that precise cue that triggers the habit, and then crucially, having a concrete plan, what psychologists call an implementation intention, to build the new habits that serve your highest aspirations. Remember, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single intentional step, or in this case, maybe a single rewired habit.
Absolutely. If you've been inspired by this book talk and you want to continue exploring powerful ideas for personal growth, achievement, and of course, unlocking your own success happiness, please be sure to subscribe to our channel. We've got so many more discussions and deep dives into transformative concepts and captivating talks waiting for you. We really love exploring these ideas with you. Until next time, keep cultivating those habits that lead to your absolute best life.